I never imagined this would happen. I came home to surprise my parents after 5 long years, hoping to fix the broken bond between us. But just hours before I was about to arrive, I got a text from my dad that said, "Please don't." I didn't understand it. I had no idea what to expect when I walked through that door, but what I found out 2 days later, it shattered me. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and comment below where you're watching from. You won't want to miss the rest of this story. It's been 5 years since I left. 5 years of silence. 5 years of carrying the weight of my family's brokenness. I moved away, trying to escape the tension, the fights, and especially my father. He's always been a hard man, emotionally distant, never really able to see past his own stubbornness. And me? I guess I was tired of waiting for him to notice me. So I left. But after all this time, I thought maybe it was finally time to go back. I missed my mom, and I missed my brother, Ethan. Ethan and I were close growing up, but he was always caught in the middle of everything. My mom, Sarah, she's always tried to hold the family together, but in the end, she sided with dad. And well, I couldn't forgive that. I thought about it for weeks before making the decision to come home. The idea of surprising them, of finally fixing things, gave me hope. I figured if I just showed up, maybe things could start to heal. I packed my bags and made the trip back, but as soon as I got close, I got that text. "Please don't." I stared at it for a while. Was he really asking me not to come? After all this time, he was still angry? Or was it something else? I sat there for a moment, feeling that old fear and doubt creeping in. The fear that maybe nothing had changed, that the years apart had just made things worse. But I couldn't turn back now. I was already so close. I had to know what he meant, had to face whatever it was that kept us apart for all these years. So I didn't reply. I just turned the car around and drove straight to my parents' house. When I pulled up in front of the house, I had a mix of excitement and dread swirling inside me. I hadn't seen my parents in years, and for so long, I had dreamed of this moment of coming home, of repairing the damage, of finally being accepted again. But as I stepped out of the car, I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me. The house looked the same, but everything felt different. It wasn't the warm, comforting home I remembered. It was now just a place where old memories lived, memories that felt almost foreign to me. I took a deep breath and walked to the front door. I didn't know what to expect from my father, but I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would be happy to see me. That we could move past everything, past all the bitterness, the misunderstandings, and the years of silence. I rang the doorbell and waited, feeling the seconds stretch into minutes. My heart was pounding. What would he say? How would he look at me? Mom answered the door first. The moment I saw her, I couldn't help but feel the overwhelming urge to hug her. She pulled me into her arms without saying a word, holding me tight as if she never wanted to let go. But as I looked past her into the house, I saw my father sitting at the kitchen table. His back was to me, and he didn't even bother to turn around when I walked in. That's when the anxiety hit me full force. It wasn't just that he wasn't happy to see me, it was the coldness in the air, the way he refused to acknowledge my presence. I tried to smile at him, but he didn't return the gesture. Instead, he simply muttered a short, "Hello." His tone was distant, like we were strangers, not father and daughter. "Dad," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "It's been so long. I thought maybe we could talk, maybe try to fix things." But instead of responding, he just stared at the table. My mother glanced at him, then at me, and I could tell she was unsure how to handle this. She didn't say anything, just quietly stood off to the side, looking between us. I wasn't prepared for the weight of his silence. I had expected anger, maybe even disappointment, but this was something else, an emotional wall so thick that nothing could break through it. The man who raised me, the man who was supposed to be my rock, had shut me out completely. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. He was holding something back, something that he wasn't ready to share. Dad, I came here because I want to make things right. I want us to be a family again, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I needed him to hear me. I needed him to understand that I was willing to try, that I was willing to forgive. But he didn't respond. He just stayed there, looking at his hands as if I wasn't even there. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Dad, why won't you even look at me? What did I do to deserve this? I'm trying, okay? I'm trying to come back to make things better, and you won't even give me a chance. My voice broke at the end, and I had to fight back tears. I didn't want to cry in front of him, but it hurt so much to be this close, to finally be home, and still feel like I was being rejected. He didn't say anything for a long time. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then finally he looked up. But his expression wasn't one of regret or even anger, it was just blank. Like he didn't care. Like none of this mattered. His words, when they came, were cold and cutting. You want to fix things? He asked, his voice flat. You think you can just come in here and fix years of mistakes? You think I can just forget everything and let you back in? It doesn't work like that, Lena. His eyes were cold, and I felt like he was looking right through me. I tried, okay? I tried for years, but you left. You chose to walk away, and now you want to come back and pretend everything's fine? It doesn't work that way. His words stung like a slap to the face. I had never expected him to be so blunt, so harsh. But as much as it hurt, I couldn't deny the truth in them. I had left. I had walked away from everything, from him, from the family. I had chosen to get away from the constant fighting, the resentment that had been building for years. I had hoped that one day things would be different. But in that moment, I realized that maybe they never would be. I didn't come here to argue with you, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I just wanted a chance to be part of this family again. But it's like you've already made up your mind. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I've made up my mind, all right? You don't get to just waltz back into my life like nothing happened. I've dealt with enough of your leaving. You want to fix things? Then you should have thought about that before you walked out the door. The pain in his words was undeniable, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had hoped so badly that coming back would change things, but it felt like I was just digging up old wounds. My dad wasn't ready to move on, to forgive, and I wasn't sure I could keep fighting for something that wasn't coming back. The silence that followed my father's words hung in the air like a suffocating weight. His anger, his bitterness, everything about the way he looked at me was like a wall that I couldn't break through. For a moment, I stood there frozen, my body trembling with the weight of his rejection. I had tried. I had tried so hard to come back, to make things right, but it felt like no matter what I did, it would never be enough for him. It was as if I had never mattered, as if all the years of distance between us were nothing but a waste. And yet there I was, standing in the same kitchen I grew up in, fighting for something that felt impossible to repair. But as I looked at my father, his cold eyes staring back at me, I realized something. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how many apologies I made, he wasn't going to change. He had made up his mind a long time ago, and that realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't me who had left him. It was him who had abandoned me long before I ever walked out that door. I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. You know, Dad, I began, my voice steady but trembling with emotion. I came here because I thought we could finally fix things. I thought that maybe, just maybe, we could get past all the things that have been tearing us apart for so long. But now I see that's never going to happen. His face tightened, and for a moment I thought he might say something more. But he didn't. His silence was louder than any words he could have spoken. It was as if he didn't even care to explain himself further, to give me any real closure. It was just easier to leave things unsaid, easier to let the anger simmer and fester until it consumed everything. I wasn't going to stand there and beg for his approval anymore. I wasn't going to waste another moment of my life hoping he would change. I had spent too many years trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep hurting myself by holding on to this idea that my father could love me in the way I wanted. He had his own demons, his own regrets, and he wasn't going to let go of them for anyone, not even his own daughter. Maybe you're right, I said, my voice breaking the silence. Maybe I shouldn't have come back. Maybe it was a mistake to think I could just walk through that door and expect everything to be okay. The words came out more easily than I expected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of the fight. Tired of being the one who always had to apologize, always had to carry the weight of the past. And for the first time in years, I realized that I didn't have to carry it anymore. The weight of my father's resentment wasn't mine to bear. Lena? My mom's voice broke through the tension, and I turned to look at her. She was standing in the doorway, her hands wringing together. Her face was soft, filled with concern, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. She loved me, but she had always been caught in the middle of my father and me. She had never fully chosen a side, and I understood why. She didn't want to lose either of us, but her indecision had caused its own kind of damage over the years. Mom, it's okay, I said softly, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. I just need to figure out what's best for me. I thought coming back here would fix things, but I see now that it's just not possible. Not with Dad and not with how things have been. I looked at my father one last time. There was nothing left for me to say to him. Nothing that would change the way he felt or the way he saw me. His stubbornness was a part of who he was, and it wasn't something I could fix. He had built his own prison with his pride, and he wasn't going to let anyone tear it down, not even his own daughter. I'm done trying to fix this, I said, my voice stronger now, though it was still full of emotion. I can't keep fighting for something that doesn't exist. You've made it clear that this is how it's going to be. And if that's the case, then I need to move on. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need to hear anything more from him. I had made my decision, and it felt right. There was a weight lifting off my chest, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was making a choice for myself. Not for my father, not for my family, but for me. I turned to my mom and brother, who had been silent witnesses to this painful exchange. Ethan was standing by the door, looking torn as always, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. He didn't want to lose me, and I could tell that he still wished for the family we used to have. But he knew deep down that things weren't going to change. Not as long as Dad held onto his grudges, not as long as he refused to forgive. I'm staying with you, Mom, I said, my voice softer now. I can't keep pretending that this is normal. I'll stay here with you and Ethan. But I'm done with trying to fix what's broken with Dad. My mother's face softened and she stepped forward to hug me. She didn't say anything, but her embrace told me everything. She understood. She had been waiting for me to come to this realization. She had known all along that I couldn't keep carrying the weight of my father's bitterness. It wasn't mine to carry anymore. As I walked out of the kitchen and into the living room, I realized that I had made the right decision. I had accepted the reality of my family, of my father, of my relationship with him, and I was finally letting go of the past. It wasn't easy. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was necessary. And that made all the difference. The air felt thick as I stood in the living room. still trying to process everything that had just happened. I was standing in the same house where I'd spent so many years full of arguments, silence, and things left unsaid. The memories of my childhood, of better times, seemed to linger in the corners of the room, but they were now overshadowed by the reality I just faced. My father's harsh words, his refusal to forgive, to move on, it was all too much. But what was harder to bear was the sudden realization that this wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about the past, we couldn't seem to move past it, was about my father's inability to deal with his own mistakes. As I walked away from the kitchen and into the living room, I could feel my chest tightening. I didn't want to cry in front of my mom and brother, but the tears were building up. I'd hoped for some kind of breakthrough, some kind of apology, or at least a conversation that would make me feel like I mattered. But what I got was rejection and stubbornness from the one person I had hoped would understand me. And in that moment, it wasn't just my father's words that hurt, it was the understanding that he would never change. His pride was stronger than anything else, stronger than the love he had once claimed to have for me. Ethan, my younger brother, was the first to speak. His eyes were filled with the same sadness that had settled in mine. He was the peacemaker, the one who had always tried to hold the family together. But even he could see that we were past the point of mending things with Dad. He had always tried to stand up for me, to bring my father to a place of understanding. But now I could see the exhaustion in his face. He wasn't just caught in the middle, he was tired, just like I was. "Lena," he said softly, stepping closer to me, "I'm sorry. I know you wanted this to work. I really did too." His voice cracked as he spoke. I could tell that, just like me, he had been holding onto the hope that maybe things could go back to normal, that we could go back to the family we used to be. But the look in my father's eyes told us both everything we needed to know. It was never going to happen. I couldn't respond at first. The words were stuck in my throat, too heavy to say, but I managed to choke out, "I don't know what I was expecting, Ethan. But it's clear now. I can't keep holding on to this hope that Dad will ever change." I thought maybe coming here would make a difference, but it just made things worse. Ethan reached out and touched my arm gently. "I get it. I do. And I'm with you no matter what. You're my sister. I'm not going to take Dad's side anymore. I know what you've been through. I just wish he could see that." His words meant more than he probably realized. For so long, I had felt like the outsider in my own family, like I was the one who had to apologize, who had to beg for acceptance. But hearing Ethan's words made me realize that for the first time, I wasn't alone in this. He understood. He knew what it felt like to be ignored, to be pushed aside in favor of my father's pride. And while that didn't fix everything, it gave me a sense of peace. But my peace was short lived, because my father, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke again. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but the weight of it was enough to make my stomach drop. "You think you can just walk away, Lena? You think it's that easy? You think you can just come in here, try to fix everything, and then leave when it doesn't go your way?" His words cut through the air like a knife. His anger wasn't directed at me anymore. It was directed at his own guilt. "You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. You don't know what it's like to carry the weight of everything I've done, to feel like there's no way out." I stood there, my hands shaking, feeling both angry and sad at the same time. This was it. This was the moment where I had to accept that my father would never forgive me. He would never let go of the past, never see me for who I was now, not the girl who left all those years ago. He had built this wall between us, and he wasn't going to let me tear it down, no matter how hard I tried. "I didn't come here to fix you, Dad," I said, my voice stronger now, though the anger was clear. "I came here to fix me. I came here because I thought I could find some kind of peace with you. But I see now that you're not willing to even try." You've made it clear that you're not going to forgive me. You're not going to forgive anyone. So I'm done. I can't keep living in this toxic cycle anymore. His face twisted with something like regret, but it was fleeting. The old man I once knew, the father, who had been my hero, was gone. What was left was a man too proud to admit his mistakes, too stubborn to accept the consequences of his actions. I'm sorry, Lena, Ethan said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. I didn't know it would be like this, but I can't keep doing this either. I looked at my brother, then back at my father, and finally I made the decision that I had been too afraid to make all these years. I'm going, Dad, I said. I can't keep waiting for something that's never going to happen. I've spent too much of my life trying to get your approval, and I've had enough. You've made your choice. And so have I. I turned to leave, and this time I didn't look back. As much as it hurt, as much as I wanted to scream, to beg him to change, I knew it was over. My father would never be the man I wanted him to be. And I was done trying to force something that was never going to work. As I left the house, the weight of everything settled around me. It wasn't the reunion I'd hoped for. It wasn't the forgiveness I'd expected. It was just final. Walking away from my family was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it was the only choice I had left. For so long, I had carried this burden, this hope that somehow, one day, things would go back to normal, that my father would change, that I would be accepted again. But standing there in that kitchen with my father's harsh words hanging in the air, I realized that normal was never coming back. The family I once knew was gone, and I had to accept that. The drive back to my mom's house was quiet, filled with the hum of the car's engine and the sounds of my own thoughts. I didn't even bother to look back at the house, at the life I'd left behind. I was done, and as much as it hurt to admit it, I knew deep down that it was for the best. There was no more room for me in that house, not with the way things had turned out, not with my father's refusal to let go of his anger and his pride. I had tried. I had done everything I could to make things right, but I couldn't do it alone. And now I had to figure out how to move forward without looking back. When I pulled into my mom's driveway, Ethan was already waiting outside. He didn't say anything at first, just gave me a look, a mix of sadness and understanding. He knew what had happened inside the house. He knew the toll it had taken on me. But unlike my father, Ethan was different. He was still my brother, still someone I could count on, someone who saw me for who I was and not for the mistakes of the past. I'm sorry, Lena, he said as I got out of the car. I really thought he might come around. I thought maybe this time things would be different. I couldn't help the tear that slipped down my cheek, but I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. Ethan wasn't the problem. My father was. But as much as I wanted to hate him for everything that had happened, I couldn't. I couldn't hate him for something that was beyond my control. He was my father, after all. And deep down, no matter how much pain he had caused me, I still wanted his love. I still wanted his approval. But I was beginning to understand that wanting something that wasn't coming was only going to keep me stuck in a place of hurt. You didn't deserve that, Lena, Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with the sincerity that I had always found in him. He's too stubborn to see it. But you're better than that. You're better than all of this. His words were comforting, but they didn't take away the pain. They didn't change the fact that I had just walked away from the father I had once loved, the man who had shaped so much of who I was. It wasn't easy to let go of the idea that one day he would change, that one day he would finally see the damage he had caused. But the truth was, I had to stop waiting for him to change. I had to stop waiting for my family to be something it wasn't. We went inside, and my mom was sitting on the couch, her eyes tired but kind. She didn't say anything at first, just patted the seat next to her, inviting me to sit down. When I did, she wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel the warmth of her embrace. It wasn't the same as the one I had been hoping for with my father, but it was enough. It was more than enough. Lena, she said softly, I'm so sorry. I wish I could have done more for you, for us, but sometimes, sometimes people don't change. Sometimes they don't want to change. I nodded, knowing what she meant. For so long, she had tried to hold everything together. She had tried to protect me, to protect all of us. But in the end, my father had made his own choices, and she had made hers. I couldn't blame her for that. I couldn't blame her for staying with him, for trying to make the best of a bad situation, but it didn't make it any easier. I know, Mom, I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. I know, and I don't blame you. I just can't keep pretending things are okay. I need to move on for my own sake. I need to stop waiting for someone else to fix my life. My mom looked at me with a mixture of love and sadness in her eyes. You're right, and I'll be here for you. You're not alone in this, Lena. I hugged her again, this time holding on a little longer, letting myself feel the comfort she was offering. It wasn't the closure I had wanted from my father, but it was the beginning of the closure I needed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. The next few days passed in a blur. I spent time with my mom and Ethan, talking, laughing, and even crying a little. It wasn't the family reunion I had imagined, but it was enough. It was real. And it was mine. As the days went by, I realized that the decision I made to walk away from my father wasn't just about him. It was about me. It was about finally accepting that I didn't need his approval, that I didn't need to keep waiting for something that wasn't coming. I had been holding onto the idea of a perfect family for so long that I had forgotten to live my own life. But now I was free. Free to move forward, free to heal, and free to build the life I wanted. And as hard as it was, I knew it was the right choice. I wasn't just moving on from my father, I was moving on for me. Now that you've heard my story, do you think I did the right thing by walking away from my father? Was it the only choice I had? Or should I have tried harder to make things work? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my situation?